Welcome to the first episode of Learn Codea by Making a Game. In this series, we'll basically be creating a game in modern Codea. Modern Codea is a new way of coding in Codea. It has something called a scene and entity type of system, which we basically can use to make multiple entities and a scene very quickly, almost like a way that Unity makes their types of entities and scenes. So basically, the reason why we're using this is because it's first new, and secondly, it integrates a lot of the stuff that is in Codea very well, like the physics engine, the drawing, the sprite rendering. All of that is very easy. UI, everything is very easily put together with this new modern way of coding. So we're gonna now run this code. So this is what we're gonna be making today. So in this episode, we'll basically be making a circle move around. So hope you're ready, and let's get started. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is click on create new, and we're going to change the project template. If you click here, it's probably default or untitled. I don't really know how it will be in the future, but what we want to do is we want to change it to modern. And right for the sorry about that, for the title of the project, we're going to call it tutorial. So this is going to be a tutorial, or you could just call it circle moving, but for today I'm just going to call it tutorial. So what we first want to do is, we're not really going to care about what's happening here. So we're going to remove these lines of code in the draw, and the print hello world is pretty self-explanatory. So what we're going to first do is that I'm going to remove all these comments here because they kind of take a lot of space. If you want to do the same, you can. And what we first want to do is we're going to go to the top, and we're going to create a game world. This is basically going to be the scene where we're going to put all the entities we're going to have in this series. For right now, it's just going to be that circle. So we're just going to have a scene. So in this scene, we're basically going to make a default 2D scene. That's where you get the default 2D from. And what we're going to do is we're going to set the Codea project to full screen. Full screen basically makes it that it doesn't have the console there. So you'll just be able to play your game immediately. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna make this the main scene, like the scene that we should be presenting, and we're gonna set that to become the game world scene. Basically the new scene that we just created before, we're gonna make that into the main scene. Now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna set the scene settings. Basically what we're doing here is setting up how the scene is gonna be rendering, everything is gonna be working. So for the game world, what we're gonna do is we're gonna change an attribute of the camera. So for the camera, we're basically gonna get the camera attribute of the game world. So each scene has a camera, and basically what we're trying to do is get the attribute of that camera. So basically we're gonna change the Y size of the camera to 24. Basically this is meaning from up here to down here, it's going to be 24 units. That's basically what the 24 is trying to say. And we're going to change game world's pixels per unit, and we're going to set that to be 64. Basically in each unit we're going to have 64 pixels. Basically that's what we're going to say. And for the game world now, we're going to change the scene color, like the camera color. Basically whenever we clear, we can have a new color. Before, if we were doing a normal Codea, we'd basically just set the background into a different color. That's what we would do. But since we're using a scene, we can't really use background, since background doesn't really work. What we're going to do instead is change the color of the change the color of the camera. If after it finished rendering and clears everything, we're gonna change the color to probably this color. I would pick some random color and see how it works out. So it's a purple color. So one thing we're gonna do is we're gonna turn off the gravity, because the gravity is not gonna be pretty useful in this project, since we're trying to make my goal is to make an 8-way directional walking type of game where you deliver mails. That's basically the plan of this series. So what I'm going to do is turn off gravity. So for the gravity, we're going to change the gravity and set it to basically setting it to 0. And one thing I actually want to add is game world for now. This is just going to be for something quick so we can see something immediately when we render. Game world, debug, draw. Basically, this physics 2 debug, basically what it's gonna do is that we're gonna create physics objects for this circle thing, and we want to be able to see it just immediately, so I can know if everything is lining up properly. So I'm gonna make a comment basically to create the moving circle player. I spelled circle wrong. Circle player. And basically what we're gonna do is we're gonna set the size of the player. So circle size, we're gonna set it to maybe 5. And what we're gonna do is create an entity with the game scene we just created over here. So this is the scene we created, and now we're gonna create an entity in that scene. So basically we're gonna make a player be equal to game world dot entity, and we're gonna make the name of the player equal player. It's the name of the entity equal player. So basically what this is doing is creating a new entity in that in the scene, so which we call the player. So in the player we're going to add a component. So if you want to add components, just like Unity, you can add components. So basically we're going to add a physics component. What we're going to use this physics for is basically to add the velocity and move the player around. That's the as you saw in the video before, we moved the player around. So we're going to use this physics 2D body to do the same thing. So now we've added the body, but what we need to do is we're going to add the collider also. So I'm in the same line, because what add does, it returns the component we just created. So if I had just done this, go back here, I would have said local, maybe local body, you know, that it would return the body. That's what I'm trying to say. But what I'm just going to do is just put it in one line, so we don't have to do that much work. So circle, this is going to create a circle collider, and we're going to do player size divided by 2. The reason why is because it actually takes the radius. This input is the radius, not the diameter. But what we need is the diameter. So because I have this, I'm going to run the scene so you can see what's happening. And you should see, we got a little bug here. New index for number 8. So it seems that we have something we have wrong here. I'll be back just soon. Hello, I'm back. And I basically found 3 bugs we made during writing this code. This pixels per unit is actually meant to be pixels per unit. And this physics is basically meant to be physics. Oh, no, physics. And also this game world, we didn't spell it right. It should be game world. So just like these are the 3 bugs I created just before. So we're now gonna run it, and it should be working perfectly. So as we see, we haven't actually rendered anything. What that physics the debug draw basically is just the one that what we're seeing is the physics, like, you know, what the physics is drawing. And without drawing, it's nothing there. So, but we're actually going to turn that off right now because I just wanted to see if it was working perfectly. Now, what we're actually going to do is create a sprite renderer. I'm going to call it a shape renderer for now. We'll probably remove this in the future and actually change it to an actual like walking type of entity. But for now, we're basically just going to make a shape of a circle. So what we're going to do is set the size to player size, to the size we created. And what we're doing is, this is a component we're creating called shape renderer. We haven't created it now, but we're going to add this component called shape renderer. So if we go to do and now go class, we're going to create a new component and call it shape renderer. And I'm going to click done. So I don't know how your class will be looking right now. Maybe it'll be different, but for now, the classes look like this. So it has a net, a draw, a touch, and basically you can add class. I'm gonna over here add the name. So I just like to add the name to the class whenever I do my stuff. So when we're printing a class, it knows the name of the class. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna change a net to created, and we're gonna basically remove touched. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna change this to size for the parameter of the created entity. So whenever you do the add, when you're adding an entity, like an entity, this created, everything that is following the function of class you put in will be like the parameters of the created. So if I had size and let's say position. I don't know, position is already there, but for now, position, I'll basically have to put position afterwards the player size. Everything we add after just needs to be added afterwards. So we're just gonna add the size, and for the size, we're basically gonna set self.size. So for a property of the class, we're gonna change size equal to size. And what we're gonna do over here is that we're gonna go to the ellipse and draw an ellipse just by writing ellipse. And you can put 0, 0, because with the new scene and entity type of system, we basically, this type of X and Y, as you see here, it's just going to be an offset from its original position. So the position's already mapped in, it already has the position we restore. And so we just put 0 to 0, basically in this local space of that position. Where we are at that position is where we want to put the circle. So 0, 0, and now we're going to put it self.size, basically the size of the circle. And we're going to run it. And we'll see a gray circle. So this is not the physics, this is just we rendered a circle. But I don't really like it's gray, so we're going to change the color. And go to style, we type style dot feel, and we're just gonna write these numbers if you want, or you can change it to any color you actually want, any color that suits your desire. And basically, if you want a special thing, I don't know, it might be fixed in the future, but for now in Codea, you have to write this, and then you can kind of change the thing using the color using the slider thing. So I have a hard coded stuff over here. So now we're gonna run it again and see that it's now blue, which is very good. And what we're now gonna do is that we're gonna add a movement to that circle. So we're gonna go to player and add another component called player.add_movement. And for the movement, we're gonna put 8. 8 is gonna be the speed. If you want, you can add a variable here, but I just didn't really want to. I just added the player size so I can do both at the same time. So we're gonna add a new class again, just to make a new class, a component called movement. And for the movement, we're gonna do what we did before. We're gonna change the init to created. But instead, we're not gonna have a draw. We're gonna change it to update. This is gonna happen every frame. It's gonna update every frame. So draw basically draws it and updates, makes every update of the entity logics and all that type of stuff. So one thing we're gonna do is we're gonna remove these comments and also add movement at the top. So movement will be at the top. And let's remove these comments. I just prefer to do that. And what I'm gonna do is that we're gonna set the speed. So created, the first parameter is going to be speed. Well, it's probably for now, it's just gonna be speed. So we're gonna change the speed, which we set to 8 on the main function. So the properties of the class speed is gonna be just the regular speed we set. So what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna get the direction of where the keyboard is, like basically the direction of where we're going. That's what we first want to find out. So I'm going to set it to 0. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to do F key pressing. This basically gets key D. Basically this function, this expression over here basically checks if the key D, this D, like the D key of our keyboard, if it's pressed, like being pressed currently, then this code will run. And what road code do we want to run? We want to run change the direction by 1. You could make it equal to 1, but for now, I actually just want to make it change it by 1. The reason why is that if I hold the D and the A key at the same time, I just want it to be 0. That's why I'm going to put +1 instead of just making it setting it equal to 1. So we're now basically set if the D key is pressed, we're gonna move right. We can't do anything right now, but I'm gonna add the code down here actually, and write if direction is equal to 0, like and 0 is equal to like an empty, not an empty, like one that's equal to 0, a vector that is 0. Then basically we're gonna set, what we're gonna do is we're gonna set the linear velocity of the entity. So self.entity is a property that's in each component. When you add an entity, basically it will add a property called self.entity, and here we're gonna call that entity, which is the entity we have, which is a player. And now we're gonna get the body 2D. Remember we set the body over here. this body 2D over here. We're gonna get body 2D. You could write it like this instead. Get physics and 2D body, all that. You could write it like that, but it's an easier approach is just to write it as body 2D. And basically what we're gonna do is we're gonna set the linear velocity to be equal to 0. This is if it's 0. The reason why is that for the next clause, our statement, we're basically going to set the same thing, but we're going to set it equal to the normalized of the actual direction. So basically what we're first checking is if the direction is not equal to 0, like it's not 0 0, because if we take the normalized of 0 0, it will basically return not applicable because you can't divide by 0. So this normalized basically means that if we have a circle and we have unit and the radius is 1, every direction we go will be 1, no matter if we have, so suppose this vector was 5 long, it will basically normalizing it will just make it equal to 1, just the length to be equal to 1. The reason why is so we want to have constant speed. We don't want the speed to fluctuate. Suppose like you want to hold the W and D key at the same time, it basically make it go faster because you're adding to what we're going to do, you're going to add the X and the Y together, which isn't really good. So we want to normalize it to make sure they're all going to constant speed. So we're going to set that normalized and we're going to multiply it by the speed we just created. So multiply it by speed. So that's what we're gonna do here. And what we're gonna do is just run it. So for now, we only have the D key working. So if we click D, you see we can move right. We're moving right, but we can't move left and up and down. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna add the ability to move left and up and down. So let me copy and paste all these code. So one thing I actually want to emphasize is that this series basically requires a keyboard, sadly. There's going to be another series I have for phones, basically I believe it's to make Wordle, but it won't require a keyboard, but it'll be more geared towards phones. So, but not for this episode now. So sorry about if you don't have a keyboard, sorry about that. But I just want you to learn how Codea works. Suppose you have one. So we're gonna change the keyboard to A. So this is gonna be the left, and we're gonna minus it by 1. So we're gonna go like Y, the other direction. This one we're plussing it by 1. Now we're going to go this direction, go to the left direction. And for the D key, not the D key, the W key, which is the up key, we're gonna change the Y, not the X, by 1. And for the S key, we're gonna change the Y also, but we're gonna minus it. So minus it. Oh. And now you can go every direction and it goes a constant speed, just like the beginning of the episode. So basically this is like the end result of everything we just did. And I just wanted to like go over it, like what we did just over again, so you can be sure we understand. So the first thing we did was create a scene, just a normal DU2D scene, and then we set it to become the main scene. Afterwards, we set some properties like the ortho size. I really don't know how to pronounce that. The pixels per unit, all these type of stuff. We set the properties of the scene. Now what we did here is create an entity and add a bunch of components, which is shape renderer, the movement, basically everything we can implement it here. Shape renderer basically makes an ellipse, and the movement basically checks the keyboards, each key position we have, and basically changes the position, like the velocity of the ball, the circle, in the direction we put in. And suppose we change the speed, maybe change the speed to let me change it to something little 2. It's gonna go a lot slower because we normalized it and multiplied it by a smaller number. So basically this code, as I said from the beginning, is just to make a circle move, and by like more episodes to come, we'll make a player move and we'll make it like collect coins and do all these type of stuff and make a little game just as a beginner project. So I hope you enjoyed the first episode, and I hope to see you in the next episode. And subscribe and to see more content.